From playing a high school basketball star on Degrassi to becoming one of the most influential artists of our time, Drake's journey is anything but ordinary. But how did a guy from Toronto turn into the king of hip-hop? What made him go from TV fame to dominating the charts worldwide? Whether you love him or can't stand him, you've got to admit, the man's story is wild. So let's take a trip through the timeline of Drake's rise to the top, from his early days to his current reign in the music industry. Trust me, you're going to want to hear this. Drake wasn't always the global superstar we know today. In fact, his career started out in a pretty unexpected place, a Canadian teen drama called Degrassi, The Next Generation. Born Aubrey Drake Graham on October 24, 1986 in Toronto, Canada, his childhood was a bit different from the typical artist story. His parents split when he was young, and he was raised mostly by his mother in the diverse and vibrant city of Toronto. His dad, a drummer, lived in Memphis, so Drake spent a lot of time between both places, giving him a unique perspective on life from a young age. Drake's early acting career wasn't some quick rise to fame, though. He was just a teenager when he landed the role of Jimmy Brooks, a popular basketball player on Degrassi. The show was massive in Canada, and it was actually a pretty big deal in the US too. For years, fans tuned in to watch Jimmy and his friends navigate high school life. But things took a dramatic turn when Jimmy was shot and left paralyzed from the waist down. It was a huge moment, and Drake's performance won over a lot of fans. It was also, let's face it, a little different from the average role for a teenager on TV. But here's the thing. While Jimmy was doing his thing on Degrassi, Drake was secretly working on something bigger. He was already making music on the side, blending his love for hip-hop and R&B. His time on Degrassi wasn't just about acting, it was laying the foundation for something bigger. Though back then he had no idea just how big it would get. He was already writing, producing, and thinking about his future in a different way than most TV actors his age. You could say that Degrassi gave him the platform he needed. While some people may have thought he'd stick to acting, Drake was already looking ahead to bigger things. It wasn't long before he'd swap TV scripts for mixtape lyrics. He was ready to show the world that he had more to offer than just his on-screen persona. Little did he know, this was only the beginning. While Drake was making waves on Degrassi, his heart was already set on music. It's not like he was just casually dabbling in rap on the side. Drake was passionate about it. In fact, while most of his peers were probably dreaming of landing a big role in Hollywood, Drake was recording mixtapes in his spare time, carefully crafting his sound. It wasn't long before he started pushing boundaries in ways no one expected from a teen actor. His first official mixtape, Room for Improvement, 2006.
VO, back again like we never left. Southern smoke
Came out when he was just 19. It's not a project most people would remember him for, but it was the first glimpse of what he could do. The mixtape was a mix of rap, smooth hooks, and some deeper lyrical themes that hinted at the direction he'd go in later. But it wasn't until 2007, with Comeback Season, that Drake started to make noise. The track Replacement Girl, which featured Trey Songz, was the standout. It didn't blow up, but it definitely helped Drake gain attention in the rap scene. For someone still trying to figure out his place in the industry, that was a pretty big deal. But here's where it gets interesting. Even with the buzz building, Drake wasn't yet the household name we know today. At this point, he was still trying to balance the acting and the music, but in his mind, music was always the endgame. His time on Degrassi wasn't going to be his legacy. It was just the stepping stone. Then came So Far Gone in 2009.
I'm trying to do it all tonight. I got plans.
This was the moment things changed, and it was a game changer for both Drake and the entire hip-hop scene. Tracks like Best I Ever Had and Successful took over the airwaves, and the world took notice. The mixtape was so impactful that it caught the attention of Lil Wayne, who offered Drake a spot on his Young Money label. This was no small move. Getting signed to one of the hottest labels in the game instantly gave Drake the platform he needed to push his career forward. It also showed the world that he was way more than just an actor trying to make music. He was a real artist with serious talent. Drake's transition from Degrassi to the rap game wasn't as smooth as it might seem in hindsight. There were challenges, doubts, and a lot of risk involved. But when he dropped So Far Gone, it was clear that Drake wasn't just another flash-in-the-pan celebrity. He was here to stay, and the world was just starting to pay attention. By 2010, Drake had made his official mark in the music world. No longer just the kid from Degrassi, he had established himself as a real force in rap with So Far Gone. But here's the thing, a breakout mixtape is one thing, but turning that success into long-term fame? That's the tricky part. Luckily for Drake, he wasn't about to slow down. Enter Thank Me Later, his debut studio album, which dropped in June 2010.
I wonder how life without it would go. From the concrete, who knew that a flower would grow?
This wasn't just an album, it was Drake's official entry into the mainstream. With hits like Over and Find Your Love, the world began to realize that this guy was more than a one-hit wonder. Thank Me Later showcased a mix of introspective lyricism, catchy hooks, and a blend of R&B and hip-hop that set Drake apart from his peers. It wasn't perfect, but it was a massive statement, a glimpse of what was to come. And the success? Huge. It was his first album to debut at number one on the Billboard 200 chart. This was when the world started calling him the next big thing in rap, and they weren't wrong. Then came Take Care in 2011. Now this is where Drake really solidified his place at the top of the game. If Thank Me Later introduced us to Drake, Take Care redefined him. With hits like Headlines, Marvin's Room, and the title track Take Care featuring Rihanna, Drake tapped into a new emotional depth that resonated with listeners. He wasn't just talking about partying or being at the top. He was diving into the loneliness, the struggles, and the vulnerabilities that made him stand out. The whole vibe of the album was different from anything else in hip-hop at the time. It was sad, reflective, and yet somehow still catchy. The success of Take Care didn't just win Drake critical acclaim, it earned him his first Grammy Award for Best Rap Album, and the album itself went multi-platinum. People were now convinced Drake was a real artist, not just a former teen actor. He was a force in the music world, bridging genres and setting trends, and the best part? This was just the beginning of his domination. By 2012, Drake had transformed from the wheelchair Jimmy to one of the most influential figures in hip-hop and R&B. And what came next? Well, let's just say he wasn't about to let anyone forget his name. By 2013, Drake had already carved out a massive name for himself. But the next few years were when he truly cemented his place as a global music powerhouse. The album Nothing Was the Same, released in September 2013, marked a major turning point in his career. The project had a more introspective and mature vibe compared to his earlier work, with hits like Started From the Bottom and Hold On, We're Going Home. This was Drake taking things to another level, not just lyrically, but also in terms of sound. It was less about proving he could be the biggest rapper, and more about showing he was an artist with range. Started From the Bottom became an anthem for anyone who'd hustled to get to the top, and it solidified Drake as a voice for a generation of dreamers and grinders. Meanwhile, Hold On, We're Going Home was a smooth, seductive track that leaned more into R&B, showing his versatility and his ability to cross over into different musical territories. Then came Views in 2016, which took things to even greater heights. Views was huge. No, seriously, it was one of the biggest albums of the decade, not just in terms of sales, but cultural impact. Tracks like Hotline Bling and One Dance became global hits, dominating airwaves and playlists. One Dance, in particular, was an absolute monster, topping charts around the world and even breaking streaming records at the time. With Views, Drake wasn't just the top rapper. He was at the forefront of pop culture. His ability to blend dancehall, hip-hop, and R&B into a commercially viable sound made him the undisputed king of the charts. But here's the thing about Drake. He wasn't done. He didn't rest on his laurels after Views. He had More Life ready to go in 2017. Now, More Life wasn't technically an album, it was called a playlist, but it didn't matter. This project featured a mix of Caribbean influences, rap, and dancehall vibes, and it felt like a direct extension of everything Drake had been working toward. Songs like Passion Fruit and Portland proved that Drake was constantly evolving and wasn't afraid to experiment with new sounds. It's crazy to think that just a few years earlier, he was still trying to figure out exactly who he was as an artist. Now, he was an unstoppable force. With Views and More Life, Drake had fully shifted the narrative. He wasn't just a rap star, he was an international phenomenon, and he had completely reshaped the landscape of modern music. By 2017, Drake had already proved himself as one of the biggest names in music. But if you thought he was going to slow down, you'd be wrong. In fact, what came next was nothing short of a powerhouse run. First, let's talk about Scorpion, 2018. If Views put Drake at the top of the charts, Scorpion solidified his position as one of the biggest music stars in the world. With a double album packed with tracks like In My Feelings, God's Plan, and Nice for What, Drake was everywhere. In My Feelings was practically a viral sensation, sparking the number In My Feelings challenge on social media. The album was so massive that it broke streaming records, and the song God's Plan took things even further, becoming a cultural moment of its own. The video where Drake gave away huge amounts of money to people went viral and added a whole new layer to his public persona. But Scorpion wasn't just about the hits. It also marked a pivotal point in Drake's life, his personal life. For the first time, he addressed the rumors about him having a son, which he'd kept hidden up until that point. Emotionless and March 14th were his way of confronting the truth, and fans were left stunned by the openness. It was a rare and human moment for Drake, who'd built his brand around being a bit of a mystery. Then came Certified Lover Boy, 2021. If Scorpion was Drake at his most introspective, Certified Lover Boy was him doubling down on his dominant presence in the rap game. With hits like Way Too Sexy, Fair Trade, and Girls Want Girls, it was clear that Drake still had the formula to make an album full of chart toppers. The project was packed with catchy hooks, catchy beats, and plenty of collaborations with some of the biggest names in music. But it wasn't just about the hits. Drake was still pushing his own personal narrative, addressing relationships, fame, and his evolving role in the music industry. In 2022, Drake shocked everyone with Honestly Nevermind, an album that leaned heavily into house music and dance vibes. This was a bold pivot, and not everyone was sure what to make of it. But love it or hate it, honestly, Nevermind showed that Drake isn't someone to rest on his laurels. He's always experimenting, always thinking ahead. And just a few months later, he dropped Her Loss, a collaborative album with 21 Savage. It felt like a return to the hard-hitting rap Drake is known for. But with the chemistry between him and 21 Savage, it brought a new energy to his sound. Drake's ability to evolve, experiment, and stay relevant in an ever-changing music industry is what makes him one of the most influential artists of his generation. He's not just about topping charts anymore. He's about setting trends, defining cultures, and leading the way. And as we know, Drake's never really done. Drake's journey from Toronto's Degrassi set to global domination is a story of ambition, reinvention, and an unwavering drive to carve out a place in music history. Through ups and downs, triumphs and setbacks, he's evolved from the TV actor with a dream to the artist who reshaped hip-hop, R&B, and pop for a whole generation. But what makes Drake truly stand out is his ability to adapt. Over the years, he's managed to stay at the top of the game by constantly reinventing himself, experimenting with new sounds, and collaborating with the biggest names in music. From the introspective vulnerability of Take Care to the catchy anthems of Scorpion and the unexpected house beats on Honestly Nevermind, Drake has proven that he's not just following trends, he's setting them. Today, Drake's influence extends beyond music. He's a cultural force shaping everything from fashion to social media to how we consume music in the streaming age. With every album, every feature, every hit song, Drake continues to leave his mark. And yet, despite all his success, there's one thing that hasn't changed: his hunger. The same drive that made him hustle in Toronto, balancing acting with music, is still there. He may have conquered the music industry, but you can bet that Drake's story is far from over. What's next? No one knows for sure, but given his track record, we can be certain that whatever comes, it will be just as groundbreaking as everything that's come before it. Drake's legacy isn't just about the records he's broken or the number of hits he's dropped. It's about the way he's transformed the music industry and inspired an entire generation to follow their own dreams, no matter where they start from. From Degrassi to global superstardom, Drake has done it all, and he's still writing his story.